A Gothic review of The Daughters of Block Island by Krista Carmen. I loved this novel, and if you're just looking for a generalized review and my general thoughts on it, check out me giving it a star rating here. This review is specifically us discussing what makes this story Gothic and whether or not we can invite it to the goth party. For anyone who doesn't know, I love everything goth, and I have 9 elements on this channel that can make something goth. You only need 3 of these to qualify. And let's start with number 1, the horror elements. Yeah, this story has a maybe haunted, creepy, dark, old-timey manor, and there seems to be a bunch of nefarious secrets hidden in Block Island known to some locals and not others. There's a struggle with addiction and the way that can sort of suck you in, take over your life, and destroy everything around you. There's the threat of death and assault and an uncertainty of who we can and cannot trust on this journey. And element number 2, character is king. The Daughters of Block Island also qualifies under this element almost to a fault. When we focus in on the first daughter for the first third of this novel, I feel like we almost get lost in the sauce. Her addiction, her crime, her uncertainty, her lack of confidence. It's all just a little too much for me. It starts to feel a little self-indulgent, a little overwhelming to me personally. And for us to get so heavy into it and to be so involved, she doesn't really get a great arc. I guess it's the only way for her story to go, the way she's kind of been painted into a corner and the way everything in Block Island is maneuvering around her. But at the same time, some of her uncertainty, her feeling of dirtiness or immorality feels unearned. We come to find out that she's gotten so into her addiction, she got into a drunk driving accident and ended up killing someone. And that's awful. The fact that she wants to escape prison time for that, is something I struggle with, because on one side, fuck the US prison system and no one really deserves to be there the way it's currently set up. But on the other side, she killed someone, and the fact that she might not have to go to jail feels unfair. I guess she has gotten to a point where, yeah, she can't trust her instincts, she can't trust herself anymore because her addiction has taken that from her. I don't know, I guess I ended up feeling conflicted with the time I spent with her and what she was or wasn't doing, why she was doing it, and what I wanted to see from her in general. And because I felt so uncertain about what I wanted, and also kind of icky about how long the narrative was hammering certain points home, and made me almost put the book down. But then we get to the second daughter, and she is a breath of fresh air we really needed in the narrative. While she is sort of still trying to prove herself and separate herself from Block Island and her mother and all of that, she has more confidence, she has a more go-getter attitude, she feels really driven, she feels more certain in what she's gonna do. She always seems to know what her next step is, and I really appreciated that about her after we had to deal with the first sister. She's very determined, she's brave, she's smart, she's got a great best friend who she can confide in, and a great little safe home base to set up in. And that second sister does get a nice, well-deserved arc, as well as her mom getting to come to some kind of understanding and solace. And even the 2 creepy twin sisters who own the Block Island Manor, they get a full circle sort of narrative. While the story of Block Island certainly is about the place and the events and the history, it's also really about the people and how acts from the past and generations gone have rippling effects on the present day, where we are, and what is driving our characters now. Number 3, more poetic prose. This story does have extended descriptions and that common flowy Gothic prose. It's not as flowery as a lot of books in the genre, but it still is indulging in that little bit extra that you don't see in common parlance. Elements of loneliness and longing. The first daughter's sense of loneliness and isolation due to the fact she was in the foster care system her whole life is sort of what's driven her whole life. First in this addiction, and now to Block Island, where she thinks she might be able to reconnect with her biological mother and get some closure on why the mother abandoned her all those years ago. The second daughter also suffers from a lack of relationship with her mother. She doesn't know why her mom is so withdrawn and closed off and cold, but she does know she wasn't getting the level of affection or sharing that seems common in most families. And as the second daughter is uncovering what happened to her half-sister and the truth behind her mother, she knows she has no one to rely on but herself. The authorities may be compromised or actively covering up what's going on. Her mother chooses to overdose on medication instead of just telling her what the deal is, and everyone else has a reason to hide what they might know. The whole story is a great study on how ostracization can lead to isolation, and how like small communities, you're either in and feeling that like community tie, or you're out and on your own. Delving into human mortality. Spoilers, but the first sister dies on Block Island trying to reconnect with her birth mother, supposedly at the hand of the manor's ghost, but that mystery of how she died is what the second sister has come to find out. The threat of assault and murder is ever present as the second sister's investigation continues. While she's there, her mother overdoses, and even though she's in the hospital and she's going to make a recovery, there's some back and forth about whether or not the mom is going to make it. And tied into this mystery about how this one sister was murdered is the original founding history of the manor of Block Island, and how that daughter came to her grisly end, and how that ties into what's going on present day, which rolls us into a supernatural element. In the first third, the idea that there's something ghostly going on is ever present and seems like an inevitable discovery we're gonna make. And while the ghost is eventually debunked by the second sister, its presence in the novel and the open question of if not ghosts, then who, sort of hangs over the entirety of the novel, questioning a character's mental health and reality. In the case of the first sister, where she's struggling with addiction and sobriety, we do question whether or not she's on mentally stable ground. The narrative plays with it a lot more than I felt like was reasonable, where she's like second guessing her perceptions of things, whether or not she's stayed sober or is actually secretly high right now. And I didn't like that. I don't know, maybe that really is what it's like when you're trying to get clean after so long being addicted to substances, but it felt to me like you would know whether or not you had relapsed. And it also felt to me like you could probably trust your perceptions of things. Again, this is just my generalized understanding of addiction. I don't know, maybe it's more realistic than I'm giving it credit for, but I found it very frustrating because she was sober, she'd done all the things she needed to do to maintain her sobriety, and we're still questioning, am I under the influence or not? Am I hallucinating this or not? But it is definitely getting the goth point for doing all that footwork. Making use of local folklore and superstition. Krista Carmen did pull some of the history of Block Island out and utilize it, although she fictionalized and changed it in a way to suit the narrative. Still, grounding it in that level of reality and detail, I feel like really helped her get this urban legend, Sleepy Hollow kind of feel to it. The mulberry wine, the history of how the manor of Block Island was built, all of that like plays an important role in the story and like explains why there may or may not be ghosts, just depending on your interpretation of events. It ends up feeling like atmospheric and localized in a way that I love my goth horror to entertain, which brings us into strong sense of place. And I think both Block Island and the manor itself take on this own isolated personality all their own. The manor feels both threatening at times and also like it might be a safe hiding place or place to shelter. I love the little bits and bobs of secrets we get about the place, the way it's revealed, and the way that changes people's perception of where they are and whether or not it could help or hinder them. So out of those 9 elements, I think the Daughters of Block Island actually managed to check off all 9 of those boxes, making it incredibly gothic by this channel's standards. It was so much fun. A really engaging, dynamic read that I think is perfect for most audiences. But talk to me in those comments down below. Have you read The Daughters of Block Island? And if so, what did you think? And if you've got another modern goth novel that I should check out, let me know about that one in the comments down below too. And as always, keep reading.